Hey there, and welcome back to another Fire Farm budget build video. I'm Jetta Magenta, and today we're going to be looking at a Fire Blast Kinetics Corruptor. If you have been interested in trying out a Firekin for running with farm teams but haven't known where to start, this video is for you. We're going to check out a demo to see how she performs on a Fire Farm team, and talk about the nuances of Firekins and what to expect as this particular support role. I've uploaded her build to a Google spreadsheet with a link posted in my About page, which you can check out to see the enhancements I used as well as their total estimated cost. With that said, let's get started. So here we are on a farm team hosted by Omega Meltdown on Excelsior. They led an awesome group of friendly folks whose names in chat I've shaded out for everyone's privacy. Omega Meltdown very kindly allowed me to record the farm, and I couldn't be more appreciative of their enthusiasm about the project. Thanks again, Omega. The farm we ran was created by Godlike, ARC ID 67562. I really enjoyed the variety of humorous dialogue and colorful costumes of the mobs. Godlike clearly invested a lot of creativity into this farm, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who's looking for something fun and different. Okay, let's jump into what I've built. Overall, I'm super pleased with the outcome. As you can see in Jetta's stats window, her numbers look good on just about everything when she's not buffed. The only cons were hit points, which are a tad low even with my Task Force Commander accolade, her fire resistance, which is about 23% short of the hard cap of 75%, and fire defense, which is 10% away from hitting the soft cap of 45%. Those numbers aren't terrible, but I think it's safe to say this girl is not built for solo play. However, that was not the goal of this budget build, since almost 99% of the time, you're going to be farming with the team as a Firekin. There are exceptions to this rule, but that's not a topic we'll be covering in this video. Fortunately, those are the only weak points I see in this build. She really kicks out good damage, buffage, and all-around utility for a very manageable amount of endurance. We did have another kin on the team. I think there might have been 3 of us altogether, so you can imagine the amount of buffs we were stacking. That being said, even without extra recovery and recharge, I'm very pleased with the totals I ended up with. Hasten is about 15 seconds shy of perma, which I wasn't too worried about and frankly didn't notice with siphon speed stacking. Accuracy's great, to hit's great. Altogether, a very well-rounded utilitarian build. In total, this budget build will cost approximately 460 million influence. It crept over my target amount just a smidge, but that's not surprising since I slotted a few pricier sets for the bonuses. As for incarnates, I didn't slot any, which means as soon as you hit 50 and slot the enhancements you've purchased, you're ready to go. It was interesting to see a few questions that popped up in help chat recently. Essentially, the questions revolved around how to play a support role on Homecoming and what a buffer support role looks like on a fire farm. While I won't be addressing support roles for general play in this video, I thought I'd provide insight into how I play a support role as a firekin on a fire farm. So let's deep dive into what to expect. Let's say you are fairly new to fire farming and you want to join a team with your firekin. If they are advertising for hitters only, technically you should still qualify as a Fire Blast Kinetics Corruptor. However, you're not melee, which might be what they're referring to. If in doubt, just message them and see if they'd like a 50 Firekin Corruptor. There's certainly no harm in asking. If you see a farmer advertising for 50 plus only, that means they want you to have, at minimum, your Incarnate Alpha slotted to at least Tier 3. This provides a level shift up to 51. Being level shifted and having your incarnate power slotted means you'll farm faster and more efficiently, hence some farmers wanting only incarnate 50s to join. Other farmers will be open to new 50s and even lobies joining. Sometimes you'll even see an invitation for sitters, a term for players that stand at the entrance of the map for power leveling. Overall, you will find that every fire farmer has their own preference. Generally, they will be transparent about their expectations in their advertisement, making it easier to find a team that suits you. Once you join and you're on the map, your most crucial function as a firekin is to keep everyone buffed. Damage is important and should not be neglected in between buffing and landing Fulcrum Shift. But I have found that teaming with a firekin who's more focused on clearing the map than on me as a tank becomes frustrating, especially if I find myself chasing their Fulcrum Shift and only being speed boosted when they find it convenient. A firekin who is dedicated to the team and stays close to me for extra damage and support is an invaluable player in my eyes. The more focused you remain on the team as a kin, the better the team will perform. In general, everyone should stick together and work through the map as a team, unless someone is proactively herding the mobs into melee AoE. However, if you've got half the group working on one end of the map and your team leader, usually a tanker or a brute, is somewhere else, it can be a little stressful. You want to help the team as a whole and keep them buffed, but you can't be everywhere at once. My golden rule is to always stay with the team leader, with really only two exceptions. If the leader is playing a support role themselves, then I find the main tank and stick with them. Or if the tank is already covered by another kin on the team, I feel safe to leave and help the rest of the group. The reasons to stick with the main tank, particularly if they are the team lead, are because of those very distinctions. The main tank is the foundation of the group. They keep the damage rolling, they remove aggro off the support, they serve many vital roles that we really don't think about, which is why keeping them buffed and supported can drastically improve the progress of the farm. If they are also the team leader, this means you are supporting not only your main tank, but your host as well. It's both strategic and polite to remain at the leader's side and helps promote a healthy team rapport. You'll notice that we're moving fairly fast across the map and that I am following Omega Meltdown at a distance until he sets up in a patch of mobs. I want to make sure he gathers the aggro of most of these groups before I commit to the fight and land my fulcrum shift. The mobs get pretty agitated when this power lands, so it's best to wait until your tank has decent control before casting fulcrum shift. Because hitters also tend to gather multiple groups at a time, it's best to give them a chance to herd rather than use fulcrum shift the second they jump into the fray and risk them jumping out of range before it lands. You want to make sure that your fulcrum shift hits those big groups around the tank to allow for the most buff stacking possible. I've covered the basics for buffing, so let's talk about damage. Firekin Corruptors are excellent hitters, not just support. You've kind of got the best of both worlds because of the Scourge mechanic and the awesome utility of Kinetics. That being said, it might just be a personal preference, but I absolutely see Firekins as a support role first and their damage as a secondary role. From this perspective, I'm going to dive into that aspect of the Firekin and talk about some best practices for damage dealing. When you're on a fire farm, you might feel obligated to do the same amount of damage and hurting as the rest of your teammates. However, being a support role really designates your most critical jobs as buffing and damage boosting. You cannot competently serve both roles simultaneously without one of them being neglected. This means if you become too focused on hurting and damage, the team as a whole will feel the effect because they are no longer receiving consistent buffage and damage boosting. It's great if you pull the mobs that are within casting range into the AoE, but generally I find it's more beneficial to leave the hurting to the main damage dealers and stay close to the tank. You might notice that I use my single target damage and main AoE powers the majority of the time while saving Rain of Fire and especially Inferno for the big groups. This is because of the longer cooldowns. Just as I try not to use Fulcrum Shift until the mobs have been rounded up into an appreciable group, I use that same logic with Inferno and Rain of Fire. It makes more sense to utilize these powers on the most mobs possible to make the most of their heavy damage, rather than waste their cooldown on a few targets. Because Rain of Fire has a built-in fear mechanic, it's also better to use this power when the mobs are tightly grouped. This makes it harder for them to run away and prevents too many from scattering at once. I think a good way to wrap up this tutorial is by emphasizing that Kinetics is a very offensive support set. The mechanics of Kinetics require you to stay right in the thick of the action in order for your powers to land. This means you have to give a little more consideration as to when to commit to the battle and when to hold back. Personally, I determine this factor by the playstyle of the main tank. Some tanks take their time clearing the map from group to group. Others prefer to herd and burn as quickly as possible. Whatever the case, I match my speed to that of the main tank while still maintaining survivability. It might seem like you have to be aggressive given the nature of the power set, but your primary role as a buffer allows you the freedom to play defensively and keep the group supported from a distance. One more tidbit about Firekins. You have probably noted how frequently I hit my heal power, Transfusion, to either save a teammate or top off their health bar. This particular heal power also debuffs regeneration, so you are not only healing your team, but debuffing the mobs as well, allowing for speedier clears. While how often you heal depends on the team dynamic, you can expect to be healing at least half the time, both to protect your team and to debuff the mobs. In closing, there are so many nuances to being a firekin on a fire farm team that I can't cover them all in this video. Still, I've pretty much walked you through the basics. I hope this video was helpful and gave a better understanding of the vital role Firekins play on farm teams, or really any team. If you have any further questions or comments, please leave them down below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.